Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, taking a nice dive into the old Bethesda news pool because today we're swimming through a little bit of Arkane, we're swimming a little bit through some Bethesda Game Studios news, and we are swimming through even some Xbox territory. Ladies and gentlemen, Arkane is moving on to their next game, and certainly that's going to be very interesting to discuss given what we saw happen to Redfall and what's up next for them. We'll discuss that, as well as a very interesting Bethesda Game Studios leak that happened a number of months ago, and a lot of things are lining up. But there's one last detail we're going to get into that, if it's true, we're going to be pretty displeased this September. As always, take it with a grain of salt, but certainly with the accuracy of the posts, it's worth discussing. And then last but not least, we're going to venture off into Xbox territory a bit to talk about the upcoming showcase, which certainly has an impact on Bethesda, as it seems like an interesting limitation from last year's show is being removed heading into the 2023 showcase. So all that Bethesda news is jam-packed into today's video. If you're new here, you're into anything Xbox, anything Bethesda, you're in the right place. Please do consider subscribing. I appreciate it, and I'd love just interacting with you all, seeing the channel grow. It's awesome. So thank you so much for investing a little bit of your time, of your day, into what I got going on here. And with that, let's start off with Arkane, shall we? Because after Redfall, I mean, what hasn't been said about the quality of the game? We know it wasn't that great. The good thing about what's going on with Xbox and Bethesda is that this one dud doesn't really spell the death of Arkane. And we can look into the future and think, what are they working on next? Well, they're actually hiring for the next project. And if the graphic is anything to go by, I think we can easily deduce that, yeah, it's probably another Deathloop game. Now, if you go over to ZeniMax job listings, you'll see that there are over 20 positions listed right now for their Lyon office in France. For those who are not studied up on Arkane, they have Arkane Austin, which is in Texas, and then Lyon, which is in France. Lyon's known for things like Dishonored 2, Death of the Outsider, as well as Deathloop. Meanwhile, Arkane Austin is best known for Prey, and now, most recently, Redfall. A lot of people don't know this, but I think it's actually fair to say that Arkane's next game isn't too far away. When you really look at their release cadence, they've always been impressive as a two-studio brand because of how quickly they're putting out content that's of a Redfall withstanding, similar content, similar style. You look at something like Dishonored 2 dropping in 2016, and then 1 year later we get something like Prey. We also get Death of the Outsider in 2017. You get something big like Prey Mooncrash, which is highly underrated and fantastic. And you continue on, and then you get something like Deathloop. A couple of years after that, you get Redfall. So I don't think it's a far cry to say that by 2024 we'll know what the next Arkane Lyon project is, and in 2025 it very well could be here, if not a little bit sooner, given that if it's Deathloop 2, there's going to be a lot of asset reusage, which is understandable, and they can maybe build content a little bit quicker now that all the systems have been designed out. I think this is important for Arkane to move on as quickly as possible. We don't know yet if that's the official plan. Phil Spencer indicated in his interview with Kinda Funny on the Xcast that they actually may hang with the game. Now, as I said in that video, and I'll say again, the difference between something like Sea of Thieves and State of Decay 2 is they had legitimately good ideas that Xbox should have hung with to fully realize, because then with Game Pass, people would try it out, and now we see something like State of Decay 2 getting its 33rd update. And then you look at something like Redfall, where I'm going to be honest, I just don't think a lot of the good ideas are here at all. Creatively, it just feels unrealized, and the amount of work that will have to go into it, you may as well just go make another game. So I do believe this is going to get polished up and then pushed out. And unfortunately for a multiplayer game, this game is performing pretty bad, to be honest. So if you look at the Steam player count right now, in the last 14 minutes from when I took this screenshot, Redfall had 246 players with a peak of 346 in 24 hours. Meanwhile, the all-time peak on Steam was 1,560. If you look at something like, I don't know, Half-Life 2, which was sent my way when I posted this on Twitter, it had 865 players as of the time of that screenshot being taken. And that's a single-player game that's over 20 years old. Granted, it's a classic, so I get it, but pretty insane that even the all-time peak is considerably higher. But here's the thing. It's Steam, right? This is a Game Pass game, available on Game Pass for PC, available on console Game Pass. What about the Xbox numbers? Well, Redfall is only at number 31 in the top Xbox played games, and it's behind things like Halo Infinite, For Honor, PUBG, Dead Island 2, Battlefront 2, and so on. So I think it's fair to say that this game is in the sub-million player count, and it's understandable to see, just given the quality of the game. To me, I think all of this is indicating that they're going to want to move on as soon as possible, because it's one thing if the public, Twitter, YouTube, people like me are going, yeah, move on. it's not worth it. But if you have data that suggests now people are playing and they're sticking with us, they actually may stick around longer. But to me, what I'm seeing here does not suggest like, oh, this is something people are actually willing to hang around with. It seems it's kind of got that Babylon's Fall DOA type of vibe to it now. Beyond the graphic for Arkane Lyon, I think it's very obvious they're working on Deathloop 2 because, well, the voice actor kind of indicated as much. Take a listen.
Do you remember like the code names they were using for it or anything like that?
Yes, I can't say them because they're still sometimes hiring us under the code names.
Oh, interesting.
I can tell you nothing.
Did I just say something that I shouldn't have said?
I think that face says it all, but on top of that, when you look at the success of Deathloop in the player count, pushing over 5 million, I imagine it also sold pretty well, it reviewed extremely well, it certainly earned itself a sequel, no matter how I feel about the game, and I'm excited to see what becomes of it, because when you look at things like the Golden Loop update, which by the way, that was already out by the time that comment from the voice actor came to fruition, so that's not what he was referring to. But when you look at that update and then you look at what was confirmed, which is that Deathloop is in the Dishonored universe, I'm excited to see them go a little more gung-ho and complex. I do think the ideas in Deathloop were tantalizing. I was very excited about them. I just hope they get a little bit more complex, a little bit more intricate in its design, because to me it felt, as I've said before, as deep as a puddle, which was disappointing because Arkane games are just not that. But I think in a sequel, they can really expand those ideas, and I'm keen to see how they do so. But the news is they're moving on to their next game pretty quickly. That is for Lyon, though. Do not mix it up with Arkane Austin, who is the one who developed Redfall, but these two do share projects to some degree, and of course, that's how the Bethesda family has always worked. But this is their project. It does not necessarily speak for what Arkane Austin is up to, but I imagine if they want to keep that loop ongoing, then most likely we're going to see Arkane Austin kind of start to fade off of Redfall and move on to something else. Time for an interesting Bethesda Game Studios leak. Now, I saw this in a video from my buddy Juicehead, and I wanted to talk about it as well because a couple people were sending it my way. So there is someone who seems to be a bit of an insider by the name of Warns, who had a lot of very particular bits of insight on what Xbox and Bethesda's plans would be, and they were all accurate. So let's read some of them and then discuss the part that I think all of you will definitely want to have some thoughts on. So let's get into it. As you can see, they got the week of the show correct along with the date range. Not only that, but they mentioned that a new Minecraft and Forza would actually be at the showcase, but Starfield would not. I think this is actually significant because everyone, including myself, was predicting, well, Starfield has to end whatever this mini showcase is that Xbox is going to do. But then we learned, and as we've now come to expect, Starfield is going to have its own individual direct this June. This person also was told that Starfield would be late 2023, which it is, and Redfall would be mid 2023, which it was, and that both games need more time. And the quality of Redfall speaks for itself. Redfall did need more time, and they got the release windows right too. Again, this goes against what we saw with a lot of the community discussions online. A lot of them were focused on, oh, well, Redfall has to come in April so that Starfield can go in June. At this point, we were locked in by the 12-month window that Xbox had enforced at the start of their 2022 showcase, saying everything you're going to see will be out within the next year. And now, with that out the window, in hindsight, people will go, well, that's not a big deal. But this was all said when that was still very much in effect, and we're not in May, where we now know how Xbox's year has gone thus far. They also mentioned Hi-Fi Rush. This was leaked by someone else, so do keep that in mind, but did say that something would be playable, which we did get in the Shadow Drop. So they got the Shadow Drop right. That one you can maybe put an asterisk on because, again, someone else did leak that. But they also got the window of the showcase right, the day of the showcase right. They also got the release window of Redfall right. They got the quality of Redfall right. They got that Starfield was not going to be there. All of this was done before any of Jez Corden's reporting, anything from Billy Coon, these proven insiders, proven leakers. So it could just be a series of extremely lucky and accurate guesses. That's why I said grain of salt. But the reason I bring this up is because with all of this being accurate and to the point, the only asterisk you can really put on it is Hi-Fi Rush, which was right, just reported by others. It moves into this next point here, which was shared over on Resetera, which is that Starfield actually may be in rough shape. And it's also said here again that Redfall is in rough shape, and we do know how the quality of that went, but that Starfield will come in fall of 2023. And if it does release in June, expect it to be in rough shape. So I thought this was just worth talking about from that angle, that this delay is important, as we've said before, that you should always be on team delay with something like Starfield. I get we're now in this era where everyone's been very pro delay, and we're seeing people still pro delay, but we're getting at times worse games despite all those delays. And that just comes down to bad product management at the end of the day. But with something like Starfield, you want to give it the best shot you can get. And if this is true, I'm wondering if it's in bad shape in June, if that is to be believed, right? Then what can they do with a game as big and as ambitious as Starfield in 3 months to really tighten it up? I wonder, because this game, they've talked a lot about testing, running through it constantly, and just making sure it's as polished as it can be. And I think that would be a great first impression for Bethesda Game Studios on the exclusive Xbox platform to launch something that's a little more polished than their usual output shows. So this does go back to another old talking point of Matty's, that Redfall may have had to walk so that Starfield could run. I wouldn't suggest taking it and completely worrying about it, but more so something you tuck in the back of your mind. So if this is a complete disaster, you go back to this and go, I was warned, and therefore this hurts like 2% less. Last thing I want to get into is the Xbox showcase. Now, I don't think Bethesda will have a super heavy presence here, just because, well, they've released a ton of games already. You know, when you look at things like, Hi-Fi Rush, that's a Bethesda game. Redfall, Bethesda game. And then we get something like Starfield, Bethesda game. So really what's left is Machine Games and id. And I do hope that we see one of these two at the Xbox Game Showcase. I think it would be a pleasant surprise, especially Machine Games for me. I'm so curious to know what this team is up to. They've been gone since the last Wolfenstein game. Then we hear they're working on an Indiana Jones game. But before all of that, it was promised we were going to get Wolfenstein 3. So I'm just wondering what's going on there. Are they working on Wolfenstein 3? Are they working on Indiana Jones? Are they doing both in parallel? Are they now moving a focus to one or the other? Is something closer to ready than not? This studio is really talented, but a complete anomaly in the terms of a release schedule. Like, nobody knows what they're doing and when it's going to arrive. And it's been long enough where maybe we do get some type of teaser for Indiana Jones. But really, Bethesda, I'm not expecting to have a major presence here. I do think maybe we're due to see something from the team at id. You know, it's been about 3 years, and that would fit the cadence of reveal to release that they typically do. But otherwise, not too much there. But what's important about this is something that is potentially a little bit further off actually may be in the showcase, according to Jez Corden, with a little bit of rumors mixed with speculation. Let's read a snippet from this article by Pure Xbox. Corden did go on to say that his claim was mostly speculation. It's based on the games he's heard will be at the showcase. Basically, he suspects Microsoft is planning on showing off certain titles that are likely to be well over a year away from launching. Here's the explanation in his own words. Quote, I will say that there are some things slated for the showcase which are a bit further out. I'm 75% sure. Some of the games that I've heard are going to be at the showcase are surely further out than 12 months. So unless some of these games are launching sooner than expected, end quote. I think the shackles that Xbox put on themselves last year with the showcase, with the 12-month window, it makes sense why they didn't want to overpromise, given that a lot of the feedback before that was, hey, y'all are pre-announcing stuff with cinematic trailers. But when you put the 12-month window on, then it tightens things up so much that it removes some of the awe and wonder from the showcase. Now, this isn't an official report. This isn't officially confirmed. But if we're to take what Jez would have here, which he's usually accurate, and what he knows will be there, which I have poked and prodded Jez a little bit and said, like, hey, you want to tell me? Still nothing. Maybe one day you'll spill the beans. But anyway, more on topic here. When you look at the showcase and the potential of those barriers being broken down, it opens up what is a double-edged sword. It opens up the possibility for Xbox to now pre-announce something that's not going to be ready for the next 5 years, as they've done before with things like Fable, Perfect Dark, and the list goes on, right? Another CG trailer from Xbox. But it also allows them to do things like they did last year with a Hideo Kojima partnership announcement, something that could be crazy like a new Fallout game, something that could be crazy like a new Elder Scrolls game, a big partnership with Lucasfilms, a big partnership with the Ninja Turtles. I mean, all these dream-style announcements could now happen if this barrier is removed. And when you had that enforced, it's like, okay, well, it's only so much you can keep hidden from the press, from the media, who continues to dig and dig and dig and spoil these shows just, you know, days, weeks in advance, where I feel like we would hear about most of these things, and it's very infrequent that we get a true, legitimate, I'd say Hi-Fi Rush kind of surprise, but even that spilled out in the last couple of hours. So this news excites me if it ends up being true, because it does mean Xbox can have the wow moment. And as I talked about in yesterday's video with the PlayStation showcase and PlayStation going first, and no doubt they're going to have the opportunity to deliver a wow moment, I just feel like Xbox needs to have something in their back pocket ready to pull out at a moment's notice, even if it's something like a partnership announcement, just a kind of dream game that people go, oh my God, it's real. I think one that also comes to mind that may be unexpected, but was also leaked and rumored, was a Banjo style remake. So there's also the possibility like that shows up. I mean, there's just a lot of ways that Xbox can go about this. We just hope they utilize all the tools on their belt. That's more ways to just check your expectations for this showcase. It could actually stretch into something a little more wondrous, which, given Xbox's year thus far, barring the developer direct, I think they need something like that, and I hope they understand that. So we'll see how it all goes. Of course, I'm sure this isn't going to be the last of the leaks and rumors leading into the Xbox showcase, the Starfield Direct. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, take excellent care of yourselves, and let me know your thoughts on this down below. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that, as it fuels all of the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.